Okay, Loren, I think you're there. Let's see.
Good thing we start early.
Right.
You know, I mean, with volleyball teams too, when we say practice at 4, I expect them there at 3:45 because at least at Howard Grove, when I was at high school and I was working at it, most of the kids lived within 7 minutes of the school. So if they forgot something and got there at 1:45, they could quick run home and get it and make it, you know, right under the buzzer.
Well, Loren's in the green room, and for some reason, I'm not exactly sure how to get him out. And you are on, I think both of our audio is live right now. So for those of you watching the countdown clock, we're coming.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to catching up with Loren. I haven't spoken with him much. We used to talk just about every day via Messenger, and he's been traveling and doing some good stuff, so we need to hear about that.
It looks like we're live, although mine's buffering a lot. I'm trying to watch us, but we'll just deal with it. I'm going to assume we're going out, and it's just on my end. Okay, why am I? Let's see. All right. Well, welcome. Hopefully we're on live now. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Well, welcome. In the background, we're kind of getting set up here, so bear with us a little bit. And I'm going to bring us into our main room here. And and by the way, guests, I'm hearing my audio coming through. I hope it's not on my end. So let's see. Let's go here and here. There he is. So let's see if we can talk to each other. Hang on for a second. There we go. Hi, Loren. Nice to meet you.
Hello. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Great. Sorry, I tried it on my laptop. This is on my phone. This seems to be working better.
We've had
BJ,
a little
it's good
bit
to
of
see
that.
you again, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. Got the Rise shirt on today.
Hey, look at that. Well planned.
It stays near the top of the pile.
They are comfortable. I think I have a Rise shirt on too.
Start us off, BJ.
All right. Well, so this is Loren Anderson. I'll let him introduce himself to us. Loren's been a friend of mine and a frequent sounding board, and I've learned a ton from him. We probably could talk for a couple of days straight, but he recently had a great experience um, spending some time with another good friend of ours in the Paralympic gym, and that was the big thing that I was hoping to talk about today. But Loren, I guess why don't you tell us, just because they're interesting, tell us how you get into volleyball, kind of your volleyball journey, where you were at, with Rise, and then we'll get into Paralympics after that.
Sure. That's a lot of stuff to include in one thing, but yeah. So, gosh, how I got into volleyball. I was 17 and a half, had been playing basketball my whole life, and had an injury that kept me off of the varsity basketball team. I got kind of very reluctant to play basketball due to the injury that I'd had. It was one of those intentional full contact type injuries. And I just didn't really have a desire to play basketball anymore. And so friends invited me to go down to, this was in Phoenix, Arizona, down to a park, Swallow Ranch Park, and try out some sand volleyball. And, I showed up, and there was a bunch of cute girls in bikinis, and this game that seemed way harder than I thought it could be, and it kind of sucked me into it. And that's where I got started. I think one of the cool things I always like to point out to people, I think it's unique for me, although not fully unique to me, but unique to the beach game, especially in the time when I started playing, is I've never had a coach in what am I on now? 30 years of playing the game. Never had anybody coach me. And I think you definitely find that in the older beach crowd. But to be a volleyball coach for 29 of those 30 years, and to be able to tell kids that I never actually had my own coach is kind of it's a nice conversation starter, I guess I would say. What else did you want to know about me? Oh, Rise. I did run a club for 12 seasons, although it was about 14 years worth of work to get the club going and running it for 12 seasons, up in Boise, Idaho. And I just sold that. I needed a break. It was a lot of work, and just a lot of things mentally that I don't think I was in a good place for. So I sold it to my assistant, and I'm currently traveling through the southern United States to places I've never been that I have the wrong impression of, and thought I would fix that impression of these places by coming and visiting them. Currently sitting in a absolutely beautiful home on some beautiful land in Houston, Missouri. Place not only have I never been, I'd never heard of it. And a friend of mine, Jeff, him and his wife live here, and Jeff's a baseball coach who I'd connected with many years ago, and we've met a few times at different conferences and things like that. But this is a cool spot to be at for a few days.
That's cool. So in your travels, I know recently, and Loren's a student of not just of volleyball, but of learning, specifically motor learning, the psychology of playing, how all those things fit together, and is connected around the world with other experts in that area. So we'll hear some about that. But tell us a little bit. You walk into the Paralympic gym, of course. Loren and I know one of the coaches fairly well. Hello, Michelle. I don't know if she watches these back or not. But Michelle Goodall is a longtime Paralympic supporter, is now full-time staff, and that's our connection to that sport. But tell us how you work your way into that gym and spend a couple of weeks with them and what that was like.
Well, working my way into it wasn't too difficult. I just told Michelle I was driving through the area and would like to come in. My intention at first was just to come in and observe. I didn't really know what opportunities would be there for me. Michelle's been a really good friend for years, and just a good person to talk to. And I think she was pretty excited about me coming in and at least being able to watch and see this game that I admittedly don't know a lot about. I got an opportunity to play at a high performance coaches clinic in Colorado Springs. I don't remember exactly when, maybe 96 or 97. I think you were there, BJ. And Bill Hameter, the head coach, had organized an impromptu sitting tournament for all the coaches in attendance. And I remember loving it. And I remember being extremely sore in my shoulders and hips the next day. I saw a place for it in my own life as far as a way to introduce another version of the game to the kids that I coached, another way to help them experience some variability, and to, one thing I always looked for when I was coaching was an opportunity to kind of trick the kids into some form of mobility or strength training that didn't seem like that's what it was. And I felt like sitting volleyball was the perfect example of that. So we would, in our summer camps that we ran, we would do some, at least one little session of sitting volleyball just to introduce the kids to it. And a lot of times during club season, we would try to introduce our kids to the game. And I was, I guess, an unofficial scout for Michelle, and that kids from our area who came in who might qualify to be a Paralympian. I gave them information about the sitting volleyball programs and encouraged them to contact Michelle. So it was just a really cool opportunity for me to be able to follow that up with the ability to get in the gym and actually meet these, not just Paralympians, but gold medalists, and many of them are double gold medalists. And when I first got there, they have some resident athletes who stay in Edmond, and this was at Oklahoma Central University, which is an official training facility for both the Paralympic and the Olympic volleyball, as well as a few other Olympic sports as well. I believe Taekwondo and possibly like kayaking, I think, or something along those lines. And so when I first got there, there was just a few of the resident athletes there. There was only my first practice in there. There was only 3 girls. For like a week and a half, that was kind of the norm, was 3 to 5 of the resident players. I did get to sit in and pretty much just observe at the men's camp. So when they do a camp is when they bring in the players from around the country who are all members of the team. And the men's camp was fully, they had all the coaches there. And I was pretty overwhelmed, to be honest. And so I was pretty happy just to watch, and then kind of got in a little bit just to help, feed balls to servers or to toss balls to hitters or something like that. And then the following weekend they did the women's camp, where they brought, I think there was 18 or so of the women there. Not all in the gym, not all were actually participating in the training. And it was a little bit different training than they normally have for a camp, because they kind of worked in a celebration for their gold medal during the camp, where the city of Edmond actually did a little bit of a party for them, and invited them down to this downtown restaurant area and did a presentation and for the community and stuff. So that was pretty cool to be able to be part of that as well. Um, yeah, and so, but the camp was a much different experience than the weekly training, just because everyone was there, and I actually got to see them playing 6-on-6 and going through a full team training environment, which was pretty cool. During the resident training stuff, Michelle, who's the assistant coach of the team, pretty much ran that, and so I was able to step in and help her a little bit. And then during the camp, Bill was there, who's the head coach, and he pretty much ran the practices and was gracious enough and nice enough to get me involved as well. So I was able to interact and connect with quite a few of the players. And I was staying in a room, they have these dorms that are part of the school property at Oklahoma Central University that the residents stay at. And then when they run a camp, all the players come in and stay in those dorms. And I was staying there as well. So I got to meet quite a few of the players there. And they all fell in love with my dogs. And so we got to hang out with my dogs and them as well. So
That's awesome. What a lot of us have seen sitting volleyball played, and it's I mean, it's a fantastic sport to watch. I've seen it. I've seen this team, from courtside, so they're incredible athletes. I don't know that everybody understands how athletic the players are. I think my biggest question, and I have not been to any of the training sessions yet. I'd like to know what the training sessions are like. What are the drills like? What are the instructions like? Let's start with some of maybe the drills. What kind of drills are they doing? Or, I know you and I don't necessarily like the word drill, but what are the
yeah,
practice activities like?
I mean, one thing, it really wasn't any different than being in the gym for the standing version of our game. The stuff they did was, as far as the task, the drill or the games they were playing, they were pretty much the same as many people would do in youth club volleyball or college or anything like that. Found that to be interesting. Obviously, the feedback is where there was a difference, because there was feedback in regards to these different constraints that they're under for sitting and how they move. That was something that I struggled with. I had a player during the training session who was somewhat new to the gym, and she's in their developmental program, and she's a resident there in Edmond, and so she comes in and trains with them. And I think Michelle mentioned that maybe my first day in the gym was also her first day, or actually training with the team as part of their resident program. And at one point she asked me a question about how she should be moving during transition and her attack. And I mean, it was a really interesting moment for me, because I've been coaching volleyball for 30 years, and I just looked at her and said, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea how you're supposed to be moving, because I don't know. And sitting volleyball, what it should be. So I got down on the ground with her and was like, all right, show me what you do. Show me how you're moving. Show me what you're doing right now, and let's figure it out together. Let's just work through this and see what's going on. And she also happened to be left-handed, which I'm right-handed, so it added another element to it. And it was just a cool moment for me that helped me remember and enjoy the way I coach, the way I enjoy coaching, which is more of the experiential knowledge instead of this, direct command, explicit coaching style. And I was able to just get down and explore it with her. And I learned more in that 5 minutes probably than she did. And that was part of the reason why I had so much fun was how open these players were to coaching me, to teaching me while I was there. Nikki, one specifically on the team, she became my go-to anytime I didn't know the answer for sitting volleyball. I would go and ask her, and she was excited to share with me. She'd get pretty animated about it, and we'd have some really good moments where we would talk about, how to move when blocking and how to move when transitioning. And, I had to ask her if I knew it was allowed to block the serve in sitting volleyball, but I didn't know if you were allowed to penetrate the net while blocking the serve in sitting volleyball. And I went and had a good conversation with her on that, and found out you can. And that was pretty cool. So, to answer your question, the stuff we did wasn't any different than what you would do with any group of volleyball players. It was just more the feedback that the coaches were giving or the players were giving them each other that was different, because the constraints of the game are significantly different than standing. But ultimately it is still volleyball, and there's still a lot of the same stuff going on as far as the external goal that they're trying to get, pass off the net, set off the net, hit high and hard. Those were all still the same. It's still a serve and pass game. So there's still a lot of that going on.
That's Nikki Navis you're talking about? Is that right?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Yeah. She's she's a hoot, fantastic person. Oh, thought we lost you there for a second.
I think I had a little hiccup, but we're good.
Yeah. You mentioned that the feedback is a little bit different, and I've been telling people in impact classes for the last 7, 8, 9 years, I think, that the place where I think we're learning the most about feedback and about working with our athletes is in the para gym, because like you said, the feedback style has to be different. We're not talking about, we got to put our hands like this because somebody may not have that hand.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about put your feet this way, your legs this way, or your arms or whatever. It's much more of an exploration. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly some explicit instruction going on, things that, I felt that the coaching staff had determined over the years of working with the athletes that in certain circumstances, it's better to do this. It's like if you're, they sit on the ground, in that most of the time there's two positions you sit in. You're either sitting on your butt with like your feet out in front of you and your knees bent, or you're sitting in what I would call like an S position, with like one leg folded in front of you and then the other leg back behind you. And it's if you're right-handed and you're hitting, you're gonna most likely be more effective if you have your right leg back behind you, because that helps you get your right hip back away from the net. And that was something I actually struggled with. I got in and played with them a little bit one day, and I have a pretty bad right hip, so that sitting in that position is very just not comfortable for me at all. Way more comfortable for me to have my left leg back and my right leg in front. And so I was really struggling with hitting because I couldn't get into the same anatomical or position as I would if I was standing. And so I felt like it's the wrong term because it has nothing to do with it, but I was basically goofy.
Earthquake.
Sorry, that was dog bumping into the table. I was basically, like trying to hit goofy footed or goofy sitted. I don't know what the right term would be for it. And so, yeah, I think, but there is a lot of exploration. There's a lot of just get the ball to go here. get whatever you can do. It's so, like, one of the players, Maddie Ball, she has a prosthetic left arm. How are you going to talk to her about her platform? Like, she actually has a really amazing platform and passes super well, but I just couldn't, as from a coaching perspective, see, like, how would you ever be like, hey, you got to get your wrists and hands together, like, or someone like Nikki, she doesn't have a hand. How are you going to tell her to get her wrists and hands together when she's passing? Like, or setting wise, she set every ball she set. Now, she's not a setter, but she did set a lot in different various activities that they did. And she set everything with one hand. And I'll tell you what, she set better one-handed than most people set with two. And so, yeah, there's so many things that you can't, that you just you like instinctively recognize from a coaching perspective. I think I can't have that conversation, so it's not even on the table. Like, so let's just have a different conversation. And a lot of the conversation in the gym was focused on more on the results, more on the external goals than it was on minute, picky body movements or body parts or internal goals. It was very much about what do we need to have happen in this moment, not what are you doing, but what do you need to make the ball do. And that's my kind of thing. So I really, really loved it. I thought that was a really cool aspect of what they were doing.
I got to see the inverse of that when working with Mike Hewlett, and I met him after his Paralympic. Well, he was still working with the Paralympic team when I first met him, and worked with him. But there's the other side of it. Of here's a quad amputee showing everybody the skills of how do you move, and watching him move his prosthetics and show them how was always amazing to me, because it was really good. I mean, he had kind of got it boiled down to here's the basics I can show them with my hooks and my by the time I knew him, his one leg, it's really you hit on the point. I find this. I had a kid the other day walk up to me and go, "Coach, what do I need to do to hit? I'm just not hitting the ball really well." And I thought, well, I could tell him all this other stuff, and I'm like, just try to find the middle of the ball and see if you can put this on it. Just focus on the ball. And I need to find more extrinsic stuff for them to focus on, because it does, once you get out of their head and every little body movement, they tend to figure it out themselves. That's something that I need to work on more, is finding those extrinsic cues that can get them out of their head.
Yeah, I think it becomes more. It becomes an easier and quicker go-to as a coach, I think, at least my experience there. And maybe I'm biased because that is the way I tend to coach anyway, but it just became an easier way to talk to the athletes when you couldn't talk to them about body parts because they don't have them, or because due to their disability or whatever, they're not going to move the way I have pre-configured in my head. And so I had to look at it completely different. Like the player that was asking me how to transition an attack as a left-handed sitting volleyball player. I mean, everything there, except for the volleyball part, is not something I'm comfortable with. And so, being able to just use external goal there as far as what is it that you're trying to make happen, and how do you think you can make it happen better, and why don't you explore a few different things and let's see what happens. That was it was comforting for me, because it was really cool to see an entire gym full of people who were very focused on the things that I tend to be focused on when I coach, which is not, I don't, there's so few times was there a player who was like, well, this is a terrible example, but I'll run with it anyway. But, in my gym where I coached for 12 years, a player hits the ball in the net, and the first thing they're saying is to themselves, to a coach, to anybody who's listening, to prove that they're thinking about it, is something like, oh, my elbow wasn't high enough. Oh, I did this. My footwork was wrong. Oh, I was early. Oh, I was late. These players, they weren't doing this. And I'm sure some of that has to do with the fact that they're currently the best sitting volleyball team in the world. But I also think it's just part of their own personal constraints that they have, maybe with life in general. It's like, I just got to get this done. It doesn't really matter how I get it done. I just got to get it done. And, some of these players, a lot of these players are just inspiring in the fact that they're achieving so much given the constraints that life has placed on them. And I know a lot of them don't like to talk about that. They don't want to be held up as role models or heroes or things like that, because they're just nice, simple, cool people who are living life. But I was very inspired in that gym to see what some of these people had gone through, and yet they're in there playing the sport I love and playing it at a level that is better than anyone else in the world right now.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about the para and this, as soon as I played it, the first time I played it was in 2000 when the adult championships came to Milwaukee, and Hewlett was there coaching the men's team. We got to play with them, and it dawned on me immediately exactly what you're talking about. We can't talk to those athletes about, or we can't have a preconceived notion about what a skill is going to look like. And I saw no reason that I couldn't take that advantage into my own gym. A kid's taller, a kid's thinner, or their arms, don't do this, or their hands aren't good or bad or whatever, however you want to judge. It's probably not right to judge that way, but let a kid figure out what the skill is for them. And that's what I think we're getting so much out of our para athletes. Every time that I talk to them or to Michelle, she's always telling me, she asks a ton of questions. What can you do? What is what do you see? The ball knows angles and force, and it doesn't really matter the form in which you make that angle and force happen. So I think that's a huge advantage. I love the fact that you're playing sitting. I knew you were. We do it every camp, every team I'm with plays sitting at least once in a while because of all the constraints and the difficulties. One of the biggest things, and maybe you can speak to this, a huge difference in sitting is that I'll call it your propulsion system, your way of moving around the court is also the part of your body that you have to play the ball with.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a massive timing element there, because it becomes about how I got to move. And then the thing I'm using to move is the thing I'm playing the ball with. I guess you could relate it to maybe like foot volley or something like that, where, you're running through the sand and then you got to play the ball with your feet. But we're not, as I found, that it blows me away how well they can move on the floor by pushing off with their arms, with their trail leg, whatever. Like some of these girls, holy cow! Like I think they would beat me in a 100-meter race if we could have a gym floor for that length, because that just how fast they can move. And again, like, how maybe you could try to decompose it and that skill and say, well, you got to push like this and do this and then push with your left hand and push with your right hand. But ultimately, in what I saw was just a lot of different people figuring out what worked for them. And I had a really good conversation with one of the men's coaches about that, with Joe, about the fact that there are two players on men's team who are both double amputees, just below the knee, and they're built the same. Like, if you looked at them standing next to each other, you might actually think they were like twins. They're very much built the same. They both have the same, uh, prosthetic, everything like that. They're out there on the court, but they play the game completely different. The way they move, the way they handle the ball is completely different. And, he made that point that, like, we could have come into this situation and said, here's how you do this. If you're not doing it this way, you're not going to be on the roster for this team. But instead, they're just like, here's what we need to have done. You go figure out how to do it for you. And if you become really good at it, then you're going to be on the team. And I think and of course the coaches are there to help with that process when needed. But again, more of that concept of a guide from the side instead of standing in the middle as a puppet master, or, a joystick coach who's trying to manipulate every little thing that they're doing. And I think it's, an element of it is that idea of you don't know how they're going to move in that moment. So let them figure it out. And it becomes something pretty awesome. So
Michelle told us a great story. I can't remember if you were there or if she was just telling me this at one of the various venues we were at. You have to be adaptive because, not as a player and as a coach, but as a player, she had a player come into the gym who didn't have her left hand and decided that she was gonna, and she had always played without a prosthetic, and she had decided she was gonna start playing with a prosthetic, and it was kind of like starting over. And all of a sudden,
yeah,
she's really struggling to pass the ball where she was previously good. Well, my arms don't go together the same way anymore. But she was determined to use it, and Michelle said it was a ton of asking questions. What can you do now? How can you move? How can you find your new range of movement? Um, I just I continued to be blown away by those types of conversations that they're probably having all the time. I just think people are, if you're not paying some attention to our Paralympic teams, you're probably missing out on a huge knowledge base.
well, I 100% agree. I think you're missing out on a couple things. One, you're missing out on a version of the game that's faster than any other version we play. To me, sitting volleyball is somewhat representational of, like, shoot, I just forgot what it's called. What's the smaller pitch version of soccer that's played indoor most of the time with a
Oh,
heavier
yeah,
ball?
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. I can't.
It's
I just forgot what it's called. But like street soccer, they play with a heavier ball. It forces the ball to stay on the ground longer. They play with smaller teams, smaller field size. So it becomes a much more faster and skill-based game than the full size of the game. I found that with sitting, the speed of the game was just, it was mesmerizing. It was just, I mean, when the net is however high it is off the ground, I don't even know exactly, but I mean, we're talking, 3 feet or so off the ground, or maybe even less. And when that ball is blocked, the ability for the libero to cover that block that's being blocked straight down and still get the ball up when the ball's only traveling like 2.5 feet instead of in the men's game, it's traveling, 8.5 feet to the floor, and they're they're able to fly in and get that ball up. It just that was that, and so many other aspects of the speed of the game. It just blew me away. But you're right, the adaptability was. I mean, there was talk, not a lot. There was talk about in system versus out of system, not a lot. Way less than any gym I've ever been in, other than my own, because it just seemed like it was make the best out of whatever you've got, and that seemed to be kind of a really prevalent message in that gym all the time. Make the best of whatever you've got, and let's adapt to the situation in front of us. And I mean, I know it sounds corny, but it seems like who best to teach us how to adapt to the situation in front of us than adaptive athletes. That was one of my favorite things, was how easily they handled the out of what we would consider maybe out of system situations. I did have a conversation with one of the men's coaches. I think it was Joe. It might have been Greg, about how that's been a change for them. I think it's been that way on the women's side for a long time, from what I understood. But on the men's side, there was very much one change they've been making over the last quad is getting them to be more less role dependent and more, like making sure that the middles know how to set, making sure that more than just the guy who says I want to be a middle knows how to play middle. Getting people to be more well-rounded as volleyball players, whatever, specialized generalists or generalized specialists, whatever the term is, where they're, and on the women's side, it was there with everyone. It just seemed to be part of their culture every day. And it's definitely there now with the men, but I know that the coaches that I talked to said that was a little bit of a change that they had to really emphasize with them, was getting them to be more adaptable within that aspect of the game as well. Having people play middle who didn't consider themselves to be middle, because it just made it easier, and that was another mind altering thing, was seeing how they took what I would consider to be basic concepts of the tactical sides of volleyball and altered them, to make it better for sitting. And, whether it be serve receive rotations, or where they're at in defense, or, those kind of things that were, I guess I'm in kind of a funk with that stuff. You see the same thing every day for 30 years. And yeah, there's variations, but it's all kind of the same stuff. And then you're in there in this much smaller court space, and you see these very unique alterations that make sense. If you've got somebody who doesn't have their left arm or left hand, or has a prosthetic on their left arm, how can you set up your defense to ensure that they're going to be more successful playing the ball with their right arm more often? That's just not something we have to think about as standing able-bodied coaches. Yet maybe we should think about that kind of stuff more often.
A couple things come to mind with that. One is, I'm taking perfect pass out of my vocabulary starting today. And BJ, I was thinking you've got that where you're measuring the performance, analyzing the film of, or the video of where, God, I date myself. The idea of, this person, is able-bodied, but not as good to her right. So what do we do with making, do we practice her to get better at right? Yes, but what other things can we do in terms of positioning and putting her in a better position to be better? You know, taking that the one step further that the sitting team needs to do is I mean, years ago I've always had this thought of, why do we have to have our setter where our setter is? Why can you not run like a quarterback would in football, where they might roll out left, they might roll out right, that it's just one of those things. I don't know if it would work, and I think there's too much risk that it wouldn't work, that coaches don't try it, but or that parents would get upset with them for teaching their kid to set from the other side of the court or whatever. But those are some things that I wonder about. So all those things kind of came flooding in as you were talking about that, Loren.
Yeah, I mean, the setting one's a perfect example. every rotation 3 on both the men's and the women's side that I saw in that gym while I was there, where the setter is left back, they would push straight up to the net and they would set out of the left side of the court. And there definitely was talk in the gym about perfect pass, but it was kind of like it wasn't put on a pedestal and like worshipped in the same way as I've seen it in the standing game. It was a goal, but it seemed very well understood that goal was kind of like the goal that's driving us to be better, but not the goal that you are going to be held to performing at every time you're on the court. And that was a big difference between the way I've seen that term used in the standing game. Either we get 7 perfect passes in a row or everyone's running. That stuff doesn't happen in that sitting gym. Now, again, I'm speaking from the perspective, and I think it's important that I say this because it was brought up quite a few times while I was there. This was a different kind of camp, both the men's and the women's, in that both of these camps that I was there for were non-roster building camps. They were, for instance, there'll be another camp I know for the women's, and I'm assuming for the men's in February, and another one in March, where they are building the rosters for world championships, I think, based on those camps. And so they're a lot more intense. There's a lot more pressure on the players. This camp for both teams, you could tell there was really not a lot of pressure. There was just a lot of people having fun. And there was definitely coaching going on, and there was definitely standards that people were being held to. But it was a little, I know that Bill kept bringing it up with the players, like, our performance isn't where we think it should be right now for this camp, or our performance isn't what we know we are capable of, but it doesn't really matter for this camp. This camp is just getting us back together after we've won a gold medal, and giving each one of you an opportunity to learn and change a little bit over the course of 3 days. And that, I thought, was, I've never been in an Olympic gym before. I've never been in men's, women's on any version of the game. And it was just really refreshing to see that these players were being given grace periods, that they're the best players in the world. They've won 2 gold medals, and yet they're training less than 14-year-olds in club are training. And they're being given more grace in training than those 14-year-olds are. And our training for the resident training was an hour and a half, and like 20 minutes of that was dynamic stretching and rolling out, and beforehand, and then afterwards doing some literally there was maybe an hour to an hour and 10 minutes of ball in the air. We're doing some volleyball stuff. I mean, can you imagine going to some big city and telling the club coach of their top 16s team that you get an hour and 10 minutes of training? That's all you get.
Yeah.
That their answer would be no. You got to take this serious. Well, these girls are taking it serious. They just won 2 gold medals. There's nobody else taking it more serious. But the coaching staff is very aware of the demands of the sport and what it means to peak when it matters. And so I just thought it was really refreshing to see this more humanistic approach to training these athletes. Like there was a big focus on the connection between the athletes, more so than on the grueling grind of training. And this idea that it was okay to go for an hour and a half instead of 2 or 2.5 or whatever. That it was okay to take time off. They had 4 players from the roster, I think 4 from the roster in for the Paralympics, who were just taking time off. They didn't participate in the camp. They weren't there for regular training. They're just taking some time off because they've been grinding and working hard, and they won a gold medal. And now they're taking, you hear that those overused tropes of, you've won the tournament, you've won the match, you've won the gold medal. Now let's get back in and start grinding again. No, like these girls were taking time off to be with their family, to go enjoy life, to think about the place sitting volleyball has in their life. And that those who decide to come back and continue training are going to be in a much better place mentally and physically. And I just, that was just one more piece of the culture that's being built in that gym that I thought was really, really refreshing, considering it's our Olympic teams, our Paralympic teams. So especially the women's team, like they've won 2 gold medals, and yet that was the approach that was being taken with them. I just thought it was just such a cool feeling.
Well, Bill Hammader is a world-class volleyball coach. He's a student of the game. I think he told me he was at, when I was taking my CAP 3, I talked to him a little bit, and he mentioned that he had been to CAP 3, I think 4 times, where you spend a week with another group of people that are all studying something important in volleyball. And
yeah,
I just like, wow, he is really a studier, and he's got a lot of that stuff down, both tactically, technically, his presence in the gym, the psychology of the game, and now the rest and recovery that's become so important. He's an incredible mentor for the sport.
With that point, one thing I thought was cool, I think there was at least 3 men on the men's team who told me that they had taken a CAP course. And, I just thought that was really cool. Like, here are these are athletes on the team who are, and I don't think any of them were actual coaches. They had just taken the course to learn more about the game that they were playing. And I thought that was really cool. I can't imagine like one of the kids in my club saying like, hey, I want to go to a gold medal squared coaches clinic or to a CAP course or to anything like that, because I want to learn more about it from a coach's perspective. I just thought that was a really cool. And I know quite a few of the women actually coach, and so have done those things as well.
It makes a ton of sense. If you think about it, they have to do so much self-coaching. And there again, there's another thing that I tell athletes, one coach in the gym with 12 athletes for 2 hours, you're going to get 12 minutes of the coach's time. What are you going to do with the other, the other hour and 45, hour and 50 minutes? So, and in this case, we know from history that a para athlete has to take on more of their own coaching burden. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them to take cap, and it's smart that they're looking at doing that.
We also need to teach them how to coach themselves, which I when I introduced the video stuff that I've introduced to the gym over the years, and some of my students back at IIT developed, the first thing I noticed was it was good at first, but then there were a few guys who were good at coaching themselves, and a lot of guys who would just go through the motions. So figuring out how to help them make that connection to, hey, I want to coach myself, which is one, and two, how to do it, isn't trivial. I wish I had the answer to it. I'm still searching for that, but it's definitely something that that I need to do a better job with.
Yeah, and I think with that, which is something I saw with the men's sitting team, is how to be better at interacting with someone who is attempting to coach themselves. Like your teammate. If you have a teammate who is working through something, they've messed up, they've not got the results they want, and they are working through coaching themselves, how you can either be a positive or a negative influence on that by your interaction with them in that moment. The men's team actually had a conversation about that while I was there, that is something that they struggle with. And the coaching staff is really challenging them to be better teammates in those moments, in those learning moments. There is some, with the men, there wasn't as much where teammates were trying to coach each other. There wasn't a lot of that. It was more players. You could see players who were working through something that just happened, processing it, and then they'd have a teammate interact in a negative way with them, which then would lead, doesn't help through that processing or that opportunity to learn in that moment. On the women's side, and there was a lot more player-to-player coaching. There was a ton, and it was all taken so well, and it was just part of the culture. It was just part of what they did. There were times where, I'm one of those who is like, I don't ever want the activity we're doing to stop so that one person can get feedback. Let's continue the activity so that all the other players are still learning from the activity. And if we need to give feedback to this one person, we're going to take them aside and talk to them. But there were many times in this with the women's sitting team where the activity would stop so that one player could talk to another player about what was going on the court and help them understand their role better, help the interaction better. And I actually found, it didn't bother me because it was very clearly beneficial. The girls who weren't doing anything were watching this go on. And I think it really helped create that amazing bond that they all have. I've never seen a group of women or girls who've clearly love playing together as much as those do, and it was true of even the ones who weren't part of the team. There were 3 girls there who were on the developmental team, were invited to be part of the camp. They were there, all the residents training, and they were these double gold medalists were more than happy to just reach out and help these girls who may never even be on the Paralympic team. They're just coming in to play this sport, and they were helping. And that was a really cool thing to watch too. It was all done in a very, very compassionate, empathetic way. And so then when those players were working through that moment of self-coaching, there was somebody there to positively support that instead of to negatively influence it, which then I think leads to a poor ability to self-correct and self-coach.
That's a great way. It's a great way to end. We're up against our hour. It's probably 4, 5, 6 really good nuggets there about how how to use what we're learning in Paralympics and drag it into our own gyms. I know that's a lot of what I've been getting out of it. Plus, just the sheer joy of their success. That's been super. What else can we say? You have any last thoughts, Loren?
Well, I think my last thought would be, I'm going to echo the words of Peter Vint, who I was lucky enough to meet over the weekend of the women's camp. I've spoken with him and traded thoughts with him for many years, but I finally got an opportunity to meet him, and that was a really awesome thing. But when they did the little citywide celebration for the gold medal, both he and Jamie Morris were there, and they both got up to talk. And Peter is the chief of sport for USA Volleyball and gets to see all of our different varying forms of volleyball being played. And he said to the girls, he said that their gym is his favorite gym to be in, because they are an example of sport being played for the right reasons, simply for the joy of playing sport. And that was definitely my biggest takeaway from being in that gym. That is the message I've been trying to share with every player that I've coached for so many years. And to see a team full of people, a team that is the best team in the world, display that on they just wore their hearts on their sleeve and their joy on their sleeve. And it was just so much fun. BJ, you've been around me a long time. I'm not a guy that smiles a lot, but I couldn't wipe the smile off my face while I was in that gym, because it was just so much fun. And they have found that really tricky in some people's minds, but I don't think it's tricky, line where you say, I can still compete to the best of my ability while also having fun. And they did that better than any group, any team I've ever seen, of any gym I've ever been in, of any sport I've ever been in. And it was just really humbling and really cool to see. So I agree with Peter. Like, if more teams could figure out how to play the way they are playing, I think we might have a solution for the issues that are going on with sports. So
that's great stuff. What do you say, Steve? We're wrapping up?
Yeah. Look, Loren, thank you very much for joining us. These we joke about it. We do these every week, and we get maybe one or two people who watch live. Hopefully down the road we'll get some more folks who can kind of interact live. But we do get folks that kind of look at it. Been toying around with an idea of maybe a highlight reel or something, but we'll have to work on that from the ones that we've done so far. But the great perspective, and means a lot to me, because having worked with Mike for a decade or so, and seeing what he was able. He was my first impact instructor, and I tell the story a lot. But he's like, first comment was, how many coaches toss drills? And we all raised our hands. And he goes, well, I'm telling you, I can, and you shouldn't, and here's why. And it was like, oh, okay, makes a lot of sense. So. Those kinds of things, and the insights today about thinking about the game differently, because seeing it played differently leads you to, oh yeah, why do we do it that way? Kind of moments. That's great. So I really appreciate you sharing with us, and dealing with some of our technical challenges as well to get started. So we're still working on all that.
No, I like it. I like the platform a lot. This is kind of a cool one I'd never even heard of, so I like it.
Well, we're glad to have you. BJ?
Yeah, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, it was great to catch up, Loren. Hopefully, on your travels, maybe we run into each other somewhere.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know where I'm headed next after this, to be honest. I actually, don't want to run over your time, but I I stopped off at the country's largest indoor beach volleyball facility, just south of Springfield, Missouri, in Ozark, Missouri, of all places. 10 indoor beach courts. I've been playing beach volleyball there every day for the last 7 days. And I got offered a job, so I got to figure out if that's something that I want to do, if I want to pause my travels. And it's a temporary job, which is good, but it's just something where I would step in and help them kind of get a couple aspects of the facility up and running smoothly before I move on. So I'm contemplating it. We'll see. So I might be here a little while. It's a little colder here than I would like, but it's 75 degrees inside the facility, and it's beach, so you can't go wrong there. So we'll see what happens.
I'm glad to hear you're doing something in volleyball.
Yeah, it's been. Playing's been hard on my body, but it's been good. I'm enjoying it. It's been many years since I played true beach on true sand, and as far as beyond that, if I do stick around, I might end up trying to do something for the young ones. I've talked to the owners about trying to maybe install a baby court like the Outrigger Canoe Club has. There's no other club in the country that is responsible for more Olympic athletes. So, and they all point to one reason, and that's that baby court. So if you want to help promote and support and produce high-level players, it seems to me a really easy conclusion that you need to make a smaller net, smaller court for the 8, 9, 10-year-olds who are in the gym watching their parents play. So I'm hoping to help them get that started too, and maybe run it for a couple months while I'm here. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
Well, look, great
right, guys.
Good luck with your travels. I was going to say, if you were still mobile, the Arizona's having kind of a cap clinic sort of thing, and the 10th, 11th, and 12th, I think. But I think it sounds like more fun where you are, so enjoy that.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see. I might maybe head that way. I would assume maybe Eric's involved in that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it'd be good to see him. I told him I'd stop by at some point in time and hang out. So. And
I think it's
Arizona,
Eric, John, Marwan.
Oh, wow. Got them all, huh?
Yeah.
Be like a little reunion. Maybe I will make the trip then, just to see all those folks, some of my favorite folks in volleyball. So.
You bet. All right. Well, thanks for being with us. I'm going to hit the little outro button in a second, and maybe we'll have an all-star get-together down the road and have you with us as well. So keep your phone with you. Like you
will
wouldn't.
do, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much. This was fun.
Okay, see you later.
See ya.